Welcome to the Right Way Home podcast. My name is Paul Osbourne, aka Ross Sadat. I am your host today for the Right Way Home podcast. This is a podcast where we have conversations with community members and we cultivate community through these conversations. Today, we have a great friend of mine, a community member, stalwart. We have Jody Yaa Dunn. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
There you go. And yes, we're just going to have a conversation
hmm
about some of the work that you've done. We know each other through our rites of passage experience and really kind of share that knowledge and wisdom with the folks that we have today.
Sure.
All right. So, Jody, we'll start at the first question that we usually have in terms of rites of passage, right?
Okay.
Which is, how did you come to be? So let us know a little bit about your history in terms of whether it's personal, community, and professional. Even kind of how we met. We can kind of add some of those pieces as well. But we really want to know, how you came to be before we actually get into who you are now and the wonderful work that we know that you're doing.
For sure.
Mm-hmm.
So where to begin? Well, I'm an 80s baby. And I think the interesting thing about that is most people that know me very well, when they hear 80s, they think of Jody right away.
Yeah.
I love 80s music. I find it very nostalgic.
Yes.
I love my 80s movies. One of my favorite movies is Back to the Future.
All right.
I've made my kids sit through it many, many, many times.
Yeah. And we still don't have the flying cars yet, but we're waiting on that.
I think we're getting there. And I don't know if that's a good thing or a scary thing,
There
but
you
the
go.
technology is it's moving very fast right now, right?
Right.
So in terms of myself, I guess when I think about just kind of my journey and where I am now,
Right.
one thing for me is I grew up being immersed within community.
Yes.
From even when I was young as a child. That started out in church, being heavily involved in Sunday school and Wednesday night kids group and Friday night group and all that stuff.
Yep.
And then as I got older, that shifted into really looking at, how do I give back as a young person, right?
Right.
And that's when I started volunteering. And from there, it just kind of grew where my work in community turned into my career in community. Right?
Yeah.
Which is how we met.
Mm-hmm.
So I was thinking about that the other day. I think it was 2004.
Oh, you're aging me.
Yeah, it was
there
a
you
long
go.
time
There you go.
ago.
It was
Yeah.
some good times though.
For
Some good
sure.
times, yes.
So that was at Melbourne Family Resource Center.
Yeah.
And when I talk about my kind of professional journey and where things started and where I am now,
Right.
I sort of started Malvern.
Yeah.
For me, it wasn't on my plan of where I thought I was going to be.
Right.
When I was a teenager, I thought I was going to be a teacher.
Yes.
And so I volunteered a lot in children's church. I volunteered at daycare centers. I did a ton of babysitting.
Right.
I really loved that early years time frame. And so I went to college, did my ECE, and then went on to university with the plan that I was going to go to teachers college.
Right.
And I always envisioned myself as being like a kindergarten teacher.
Right.
And while I was in university, I started working at Malvern part-time.
Right.
And for me, it was just, it's just something to do part-time. I was doing volunteer coordination.
Right.
And that was when the universe was like, Jody, we have a different plan for you.
So it always comes from the left side, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So while I was working there, that for me was when I really got to experience the Black community. Right. And just like the vibrancy of what was happening. Malvern had a lot of residents that were really active and really passionate about speaking up for what they needed in community, right? And that, to me, I found that really inspiring.
Right.
And while I was there, I got offered the position to manage the youth department.
Mm-hmm. So that's where I met you in that position.
Exactly.
Right.
And when they offered me the position, I said no. I said, I don't work with young people. I'm here to work with early years. That's not what I'm about. And they just said to me, Jody, just try it. Right. If you don't like it, we'll figure something out, but we really feel that you would be good in this position.
Right.
And it's funny because ever since then, I've always worked in spaces that's centered around our young people.
Right. So it's interesting that you mentioned earlier around, getting that call from the universe. Mm-hmm. And sometimes we answer it, sometimes we don't.
Right.
Other times we ignore it, and just really, we come back to it. So it's an interesting piece to share. right? Especially, with the work that we do with young people, or sometimes even, older people around, kind of fighting against ourselves,
Yeah.
right? And not really listening to that. But when you do listen to it, right, and what that means. So yeah, so let us know a little bit, once you got into that role,
Yeah.
what did that look like for you?
So it's funny. I would say that it felt natural,
Mm.
right? And I think that things aligned because it really was where I was supposed to be.
Right.
People talk about, what's their purpose and what are they supposed to be doing here and all of that.
Right.
If you had asked me what my purpose was, I never would have said it was to work with young people, right? Funny enough, after I finished in that position,
right,
I tried to go back to what I thought I was supposed to be doing.
Right.
And I went back to the school system to work within the classroom. And I hated it.
Yeah, we love you students out there, but
yeah,
we get it.
My spirit was, you are not supposed to be here.
Right.
And I remember being in the position for 2 months and thinking, why am I not happy? I'm getting my summers off. I have the perfect working hours. The job, it was probably the opposite of challenging.
Right.
Right. And I just thought, what is there not to like about this? But my spirit was not settled. Right.
Right.
And I got a call while I was there to say, this organization is starting up. We're going to be working with young people. We'd love to have you. And I was like, there's my out.
There you go. It's
right?
aligned, yeah.
So I always refer back to that because anytime in life I'm trying to make decisions around what I should be doing, I always tell myself, listen to your gut.
Yeah.
Listen to your inner voice. It
right.
will always get you back on track.
Exactly. And sometimes, things manifest in different ways. Yeah. So you mentioned earlier around, you thought you'd be a teacher, right? And my observation is that you are a teacher.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right.
Right?
Yeah.
You are a teacher, just not in that physical classroom.
Exactly.
That didn't honor your spirit or that wasn't right for you. Right? But you're still teaching through your work. Yeah. Right? And I think that's a good thing.
Sure.
Right? It's a good thing. So, but yeah, let me know a little bit more, as we're talking about how you've come to be. I've known that, you've done a lot of work in terms of justice for young people. Let us know a little bit about that work that you did in the past. And, yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So I guess while I was in Malvern, we had so many young people that would come into this space, right. And they had good intentions, but would get wrapped up in the justice system, right? And sometimes it was something small, like going to the mall and taking something from Shoppers Drug Mart, or sometimes it was very serious in terms of assault and weapons charges and things like that. And what I was seeing is that young people would get wrapped up, and then they would just get stuck in this revolving door. And they would come to me and they would talk and they'd say, I want to do this. I've got these goals. This is what I want to do in school. This is where I see myself going. But they just couldn't get out of that system.
Right.
And from there, I went on to work with an organization that really focused on working with African Caribbean young people that were justice involved. Right. And what was so beautiful about that was being able to say, let's sit down with our young people. Instead of us deciding as staff what we think our young people need, let's sit down with them,
Wow, that's revolutionary.
Yeah, you're wrapped up in the system. Yeah. What do you need from us? How can we pour into you so that you can recognize and say, these are the skills, these are the talents that I have. Right. You just need some assistance in kind of opening that tool kit to get things up and going, right?
Right. Which again is a whole different approach, right? Because coming back to the teaching piece, traditionally you have a teacher in the front of the classroom, pouring knowledge into you. Yeah. Right. This looks like it was more of a way to meet young people for them to share, this is what I need. Right. Because many times we don't ask them, what do you need? We assume what they need. Yeah. Right. And then we keep it moving. When it could be something totally opposite. It could be that little thing. It could even be the attention. Yeah. Right. It could be, hey, I'm just hungry today, right? Is there a safe with that? Let me start with that, right? Or is there a safe space for me to talk about, this whatever racist teacher did something today in class, pissed me off. I can't really share it, but here I'm with some peers and some caring, elders or adults that I can. So sometimes, it's I love that piece around getting it from them, right? So I know you did some work in the courts or the court diversion kind of programs as well. How did that work go, and how did that kind of impact yourself? How did that come about?
Yeah, so the organization that I just spoke about, unfortunately, it closed due to funding, right? Which is just a common thing that happens in community. You get amazing services. You have this organization that does amazing work, but unfortunately, the money's not there to sustain it, right? So I ended up applying for a position to be a justice program manager out of 311 Jarvis Youth Court there.
Right.
And the unique thing about working there was I was able to take so much of the work that we had done at the previous organization around being culturally responsive, right? So how do we, it's one thing to work with young people in a way that's youth-centered, that allows them to lead that process, but how do we ground identity in terms of the work that we're doing, right? How do we provide spaces for young people to be able to sit and pause and say, do I know who I am in order to know where I need to go and how I need to get there?
Love it.
And so I took a lot of those principles just around being culturally responsive and was able to introduce it into a program that had never done that before.
Right.
It was previously, we don't see color. We're just here to work with everybody. And I was like, you better see my color. It's a big deal, right?
See my color and my culture.
Exactly.
To be honest, like that's also something as well. Yeah.
For sure. So what we did there was we utilized Indigenous principles around restorative justice, really working with young people that were facing charges to do circle processes and say, how are we going to come to a resolution that works for everybody? Right.
Yeah.
And so it was really interesting to have young people in the same space as sometimes they're co-accused and really looking at, this is the incident that occurred. And it's not about whether you're right or wrong, or whether you're guilty or whether you did it. To me, none of that ever mattered. It was, we're all here in this space. How do we come to a resolution to fix potential wrongs? And how do we work together so that you don't end up in the system again?
Exactly, in that revolving door. Yeah. Okay, that's nice work. So, I mean, some of the critical questions you just mentioned around was, like, who am I? Who do I want to come? Who do I want to be? And I know that we both were initiated into the same rights process or from the same organization, Yensumu, giving big ups and respects to Elder Nene, Sister Joanne, and Sipo, who guided my process, as well as Aku and Essie. I know that were part
they
of
were
your
my big sisters for
They
rights.
were your big sister for rights, right? So that being said, how did you come to rights?
Yeah, so the first time I heard about rights was through you.
There you go.
I had never heard of it before. I remember to this day sitting in the boardroom at Malvern Family Resource Center, and we were sitting at the computers working. I think it was lunch hour, and we were eating, and you were saying, "I'm going to the continent," and you started talking about this trip and what was happening. And I was like, "Oh my gosh, this is amazing!" Because I would say back then, how I grew up, I didn't grow up enriched in my roots and my culture, right? I knew I was Black. I knew I was Jamaican. That's probably where it ended for the most part. I didn't even understand the rich history around the Maroons and tracing that back to Ghana, right? So to hear you talk about going to the continent and you started talking about rights, and I was like, this sounds really interesting. I need this because I had that thirst, but I didn't know where to even go to get that, Get that information. So that time passed. And then when I started working at the next organization, I had 2 elders in community approach me and say, as a leader in community, we think that you should be doing this. And I was like, yes, I remember I heard about this. And I said, I'm not ready yet, but I will be. And then I think it was 2014 when I started the rights process. Now, apparently my rights group took the longest to initiate ever.
Well, listen, you got the longer the process, the more you got to work it out. So it makes sense.
Exactly.
It makes sense,
so I started the process. We started with, I think, 13 in my group. We initiated the following year. It was 6.
Okay.
And I always point that out to people to say that rights is a journey. It's not something that you decide, oh, I'm going to go to Niagara Falls for the weekend. Let me pack my bag and off I go.
Even though some people do, but I hear exactly what you're saying.
Hence why we started with 13 and ended with 6,
This is it.
But it's a journey. It was not easy. It forced me to look at myself, to go back to purpose. And am I in alignment with my purpose? Do I truly understand my identity? Do I have that connection to my ancestors to understand why I am, who I am, and why I have certain desires or certain visions? Where does that come from,
Yeah.
So, we initiated in 2015. It was Wawa Abba. Yep. And the beautiful thing about rights, which I also always tell people, is they literally become like family. So not everybody in my group do I connect with,
Right.
but there's some people in that group that they can call me anytime and I'm going to drop what I'm doing, and vice versa.
Right. And there's a bigger rights family, right?
Exactly.
Like, we're rights
Yeah.
family. I know
Yeah.
you still connect with
Yeah.
supporting Aku,
Mhm.
doing her rights in her group. So
Exactly.
which is a great thing, right? So
Mhm.
definitely that's something that we want to share more with folks about,
Yeah.
what the rights journey looks like. And
Mhm.
that's a little part of the actual catalyst for the show. So Right Way Home. So what is it that takes us home, wherever home is? Could be the Caribbean, could be
Yeah.
Africa, could be anywhere.
Yeah.
But what are the things that center you, right? And
They
home
give you
could
that
be here.
grounding.
That
Yeah.
ground, they give you
Yeah.
that grounding as well. So,
Yeah.
so for anybody who may hear this and are considering, maybe joining a rights process or putting the young person in the rights process,
Mhm.
what advice or lessons maybe, and I know as
Yeah.
well, your son also did the rites of passage, which
Exactly.
is,
Yeah.
we need to do a whole show on
Right?
mothers and sons who have done rights.
It's pretty
Right?
interesting. It's pretty interesting, and even now supporting with facilitation
Right.
of another rights group.
Right.
To me, that's been really special for me to say, okay, I went through rights, and now I can also share some
Yeah,
of my
you can give
experiences
it back,
as I
yes.
teach and lead. Right.
Right.
I think the most important thing is to know that you're ready. I would say that it's not something to just, like I said, like you just don't pack your bag and decide you're going to do rights.
Right.
I would say that if you really are asking yourself, what is my purpose? How do I give back, and how do I strengthen my community?
Right.
How do I build a real village, and how do I help sustain that?
Right.
Then I would say you're probably ready for rights, right?
Right.
And the journey looks different for everybody.
Right.
But as long as you're open and you're willing, and I would certainly say you have to be humble to the process. Yeah.
You got to. And I like that readiness, right?
Yeah.
You got to be ready for rights, because it makes sense.
Mhm.
So that being said, one of the other questions that we ask in rites of passage, of course, is, who am I?
Yeah.
Right. So who is
Mhm.
Jody Dunn? And please let us know about your journey, your new journey.
Yeah.
We're excited to
Yeah.
hear about Jody Yaa consultation, but
Mhm.
let us know who is Jody. For it to ask you the question,
Yeah.
what would be your answer?
I'd say there's a whole lot going on. It's not always coordinated and organized, but I'm here.
You're here.
Take it or leave it. Who am I? So aside from, I guess, some of what I've shared with you,
Right.
I'm also a mom. And I talk about that because that consumes a lot of what I do and how I spend my time.
Right.
I have 4 children. My oldest, he's going to be 23 in May, which is wild. And that's, as you know, he finished rights in, I think, in between grade 9 and grade 10. I'm pretty sure.
Yes,
grade 9.
Yeah.
And then I have a 15-year-old, a 13-year-old, all boys. And then my youngest, my daughter, who's 7.
Right.
Yeah. So I think part of rights for me has been trying to be purposeful around the knowledge that I share with my kids, right? I talked about the fact that, yes, I grew up and I knew my history in a sense, but I really try to make sure that my children know who they are, right? And be unapologetic about that.
Right.
And I find,
I love that.
Yeah, not even with my own children, just in general, I love to see how confident young people are now around how they advocate for themselves, right? In different spaces and whatnot. And
yeah. So it makes sense. So again, obviously you're a mother, you're a community worker, but let's know about this new journey that you're on with starting your own company, doing your own thing. Because obviously there's so much that you've done over the years, but I think it's exciting for us to kind of find out more about this new journey that you're on.
For sure. So when after I was at the courthouse, I resigned from there. Again, my spirit said, you know what? Some amazing things have happened.
Yes.
It's time to go, right?
That's it.
And so I shifted into a position as a project manager to work at a legal clinic. And the purpose of the project was really looking at anti-Black racism across the province. And not to see if it exists, we know that. But it was really focused on what are the unique nuances across the province, right? So for myself, raising my family in Durham, what does that look like for me in terms of what I navigate versus living in Windsor or Ottawa or being in Toronto, right? And then also looking at the resources and how communities really mobilizing to support some of that.
Right.
So as the project was probably about halfway through, my spirit was saying, it's time for you to kind of take a step to the side, right? And I think part of that was because working in community for so long, yes, you're able to do amazing work and it's wonderful to work with young people and all these things, but you also are constantly navigating systemic racism everywhere you go, right? From funders to senior management to the board, because you as a manager, you're constantly advocating for what the frontline team needs and what the young people need, right?
So you're in between that.
Exactly.
I hear you 100%. Yeah.
And it gets exhausting.
It does.
And I thought, how do I continue to do what I'm doing without the bullshit in my mouth, right?
No, good. Without all the red tape, without the,
exactly.
You know what I mean? Trying to be who we're not. But I hear you. Go ahead.
Yeah. So I decided to start a consulting company.
Right.
And that has really allowed me to continue what I do without having to ask for permission. Right.
And be your authentic self and deliver the work in the way you want to, right? So,
exactly. So I work with grassroots organizations, which I would say is probably my first love.
Yes.
So working with community members to say, you know what, we've got this great idea.
Right.
We're doing the work, but how do we get some structure in place? How do we kick it up to the next level?
Right.
And so I work with them around that in terms of everything from culturally responsive programming, developing curriculum, strategic planning, all of that. But rights certainly influences the way that I engage with my clientele. As well.
Exactly. So what is some of the lessons or some of the blessings that you had so far and some of the challenges around this kind of work?
Yeah. I think I'll start with the challenges first.
Okay.
I think the biggest challenge is that wanting to be able to support, but sometimes the financial resources aren't there. Right.
Yes.
And so it's trying to figure out, okay, how much of my time do I just give because I get it and I want to support, but then I also got bills to pay, right? It's a business.
And mouths to feed.
Exactly. And that's just the reality, right? So I do find it a challenge sometimes even to articulate that to my clients. Oh, but Jody, you love community. Couldn't you just, I'm like, yeah, but I got a family.
Give me a blind. Yeah.
Right. So that's certainly a challenge. In terms of the rewards, there's nothing I love more than an organization coming to me and saying, this is what we're doing, but we really need help in this area. And being able to work with them and hearing them say, oh my God, this is exactly what we needed. Or this is the vision that we had, and you've been able to put it onto paper.
And
I'll say, okay, I'm doing the right thing.
Yeah. It's beautiful, again, and to see people motivated by the success. So I definitely hear that. So that's wonderful. So please let us know if we want to get in contact with yourself or your services. How do we do that?
Yeah. So I'm pushing everybody to my Instagram.
Okay.
Simply because it's been a struggle for me to build that online presence. And we've talked about that, right?
Right. Yeah.
How do you get your business out there without feeling like you're gloating or bragging about what you do?
Right.
So I've had a few people say to me, no, sis, you need to build your presence. Let people know what's available and what you can provide.
And you're doing a great job with that. But
thank you.
Yeah, go ahead. So what is the IG and how do we connect with you?
Yeah. So my Instagram is Jody_Yaa, JODY_YAA.
Okay.
Follow me. I'll follow you back. And then in terms of, getting involved and whatnot, a lot of the work that I do is through word of mouth.
Right.
As much as I post and whatnot, I would say 90% of my clientele is because I work with somebody or they know me or they know the work that I've done.
Right.
And that's how business flows.
Exactly. And that is actually a great lesson for folks. I mean, you've got to, like I always tell people, you have to be in community before community sees you.
Exactly.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
A lot of times in this field that we work in with nonprofits and organizations, they're like, oh, the community is not showing up. But are you in community?
But do they know you?
Do they know you? And why should they show up? You know what I'm saying? Like, why should I show up? Well, you have to be part of community in order for community to really see you and to show up. Because when you reach back and they go, oh, I know Paul, I know Jody, I know Sadat, you're already there, right? So I think that's a great part with it. So one of the final questions that we ask in Rights of Passage, of course, is what is my life purpose?
Yeah.
So do you feel that the work that you're doing and also, in terms of family life, community, social, do you feel that right now that you are living your purpose, or
Yeah.
you've identified that purpose, and what does that look like for you?
Yeah. It's funny, because I've been supporting with rights,
Mm-hmm.
it also takes you through this self-reflection journey as well, right?
Right.
And we were doing the process of life plans, which, so everybody that goes through rights, you have to do a life plan,
Right.
a plan for your life, right?
Right.
It's almost like a strategic plan,
Right.
but I'm the subject matter, and
There
where
you
am I
go.
going? How am I going to get there? What tools do I have? What resources do I need, right? And the why.
Right.
And as I was doing the life plans with the group, I was thinking, I need to go back and revisit mine.
Right.
And so I feel like I'm in not a crossroads,
Mm-hmm.
but I think as you mature and you grow,
Right.
it's not that your purpose changes,
Yes.
but it does shift
Yes.
in terms of what it looks like, right?
Exactly.
So yes, I'm still 100% in line with supporting community and being able to use the skills that I have to uplift.
Right.
But how I'm doing that is definitely looking very differently than it did
Right.
2 years ago.
Exactly. And we even talk about the, two things. One, I know in the past when I've worked with young people and facilitated rites of passage, they're always like, why do we have to do a life plan for 10 years?
Nobody wants to do it.
Right. But what I've always said to them is that it's not necessarily the goal that you have today, but it's understanding the process and the importance of creating a life plan.
Yeah.
It's not actually what's on the paper, right?
Yeah.
Because things will shift, things will
Exactly.
change.
Life happens.
Things come, and for us as adults as well, right? And elders, things shift and change.
Yeah.
And who saw the pandemic coming, right?
Okay, then.
You know what I'm saying? That shifted a whole lot of things for a whole lot of people, right? So I think that it's important to, understand the process around those pieces, right? And I like the part you said around who can support your vision.
Yeah.
Because that's the other part about it, right? We can have a vision, but it's important to have that level of support.
I think one thing I'll say about, you talked about that larger rights family, the support that I've had, just in terms of, and that's a challenge in itself, right? Like, am I going to leave this job that just gives you your consistent paycheck to jump over here and not know, especially after the pandemic, not knowing like the economy and everything else.
Right.
But the level of support that I've gotten from community has been crazy.
Yes.
And I hope that also goes both ways, right?
Right, of course.
But a lot of that too is just knowing that you have champions in your corner that are rooting for you and want to see you win.
Yeah. As the young people say, the real ones show up, right?
That's right.
And it's true.
Yeah.
And I've had the similar experiences. Definitely I'm doing my independent thing as well.
Yeah.
And I don't know why I found it. I don't think the word is surprising, but I think reassuring that community had you.
Reassuring is the word.
Reassuring is the word, right? And you're like, really?
Okay, you got me.
You
All
got
right.
me. I'm getting these calls at 2:00 in the morning, brothers. I just called to say how you doing. Well, I'm sleeping, but thank you for checking in. You know what I mean? And I found that is some of the lessons in terms of not just the rights family, but really being in community and connecting with folks. So I'm glad that you kind of pointed out that as well. All right. So as we begin to wrap up, I just want to put it out to you. Are there any things that you're involved in now that we should know about? Or again, is there anything that you want to do that you haven't been doing? Right?
Ooh, interesting
What's
question.
on that list?
I guess I find it tricky because a lot of the clients that I work with, I can't talk about it.
Yeah.
Right?
So I'm like, oh, for sure.
But I think in terms of what is something that I would like to do more of?
Sure.
I think for me, being able to work with organizations around reimagining some of their programs, right? So
love it.
How do we take this and really build our culture into what's happening so that young people can come in and be like, yeah, this resonates with me because it's speaking my language, right?
Love it.
The content of what's happening within the programming, that reflects my life, that reflects my experiences.
Right.
So I would like to do more of that.
Right.
The one thing I find is that I think there's a few definite benefits of COVID, right? And one of them, I think, is it gave people the opportunity to pause.
Right.
It gave people the opportunity to really plug into this idea around our history and understanding our real history and not what has been told to us by colonizers, right?
Right.
And so I'm starting to see that trickle up more so in community as well.
For sure.
Hold on, maybe we really need to actually look at our programs because maybe multicultural doesn't cut it. Maybe
Yeah.
we actually need to do programs that specifically focus on people's identity and cultures in a meaningful way, right?
Right. I love
Yeah.
it. I love it. And I want to say that already. As you say that, you brought back an idea I was thinking about the other day is reimagining rights. What would that look like?
Ooh.
So we're going to have a whole
we'll have to
section
talk.
on that. We're going to talk about that. But you're right.
Mhm.
The whole reimagination. I love it because I was here last year for a lecture by
Mhm.
Dr. Wade Nobles, and he said there's two things that we have: memory and
Mhm.
imagination. Right? And memory has to do with the history and everything like
Yeah.
that. And then the imagination is
Where you can go.
where we can go with
Yeah.
it, right?
Yeah.
So we're loving
Mhm.
that. So again, our guest today was Jody Yaa Dunn.
Mhm.
We thank you so much for being here. Family,
Always a pleasure.
always,
But you
always.
didn't feed me, so I don't know.
Listen. I know you're on your way to get something to eat, but next time you come here, because there will be a part two.
I think I owe you lunch. It's all good.
No, it's all, no, you will be fed. You will be fed. Whatever you want to do, it's all good. So speaking about that, yeah, we have a show coming up, a comedy show, Let Him Eat Laughs.
I'm
So
come to
this
that.
Saturday, April 1st.
Mhm.
So come on out. If you're in Toronto, we'll kind of pull up some of that information for you later. But that being said, thank you so much.
Mhm.
Honor,
Thank you again.
blessings,
Mhm. It's always
greetings
good
to you and your
connect.
family. Always
Sure.
good to see you back in the borough.
Mhm.
You know what I
Hey.
mean? Always good to see you back in the borough. And again, this has been Scar Pod Studios, our new space. We want people to come on down, and yeah, we'll let people know more about it. So blessings,
That's
travel
what's
safe,
up.
travel well,
All
stay
right.
black. All right,
Always.
here we go.